guided by principles of good governance, including transparency, ethical behavior, and fiscal accountability.
Disclose confidential information. As you know from your Open Meetings Act training, that it's not a violation of state law to disclose what you talk about during a closed session. A violation of state law is if you disclose a certified agenda, which you would not have a copy of, or the tape recorder. So there's nothing in state law precludes any council member or staff member who attends a closed meeting from disclosing to the public what they talk about. But as we talk about in the training sessions, if you're not going to respect that privilege that's given to the body as a whole, don't have a closed meeting. Another one is accepting any gift from a person that might reasonably tend to influence such officer in the discharge of such person's official duties. Any gift which would have been offered or given to the person if such person was not an officer or employee of the city. Steve, if you and I are lifelong friends and I decided I wanted to give you a bottle of whiskey because you've been such a good friend to me, you could accept it. Or my football tickets if I had them. I don't have them. So I hope that you get some.
How about the whiskey? How about the whiskey? How about the whiskey? How about the whiskey?
Now, we have a detailed process for complaints. Complaints are to be made in writing. We'll have a form provided, notarized and filed with the city secretary. It's supposed to describe in detail the act or acts that are complained of in the specific sections of the code that alleged to be violated. And then a copy of the complaint will be provided to the council, to the city attorney's office, and to the affected individual. The reason is that you need to have some kind of checks and balances and some screening process. First, it's got to be in writing, notarized. It gives it a little more formality and legitimacy. And it shouldn't be just a witch hunt or a fishing expedition. They need to say specifically what it is, date, time, location, and describe the conduct and what they believe the violation to be. Our office will initially review the complaint, determine if it contains sufficient detail, and alleges a violation. But basically what we're doing is doing a prima facie check. Is there something there? Is it lacking in detail? And then if it is lacking in detail, we can contact the complaining party and say, look, we need more information. You need to be more specific, or you need to tell us what is in violation. Give them an opportunity to improve the quality of their complaint so that it makes the prima facie pass. And then the affected officer can file a response within 7 business days. And then if it's determined insufficient detail or fails to allege a prima facie case, and this is your stop method here, then the report is filed with the city council. And then if there's a criminal violation, I'm obligated, not by the Code of Conduct, but also by the Code of Professional Responsibility to report all crimes. And so the idea is having a process that will screen through things that might not rise to the level of a complaint under the code, or something that is just insufficient. This is a little bit more than even Steven to determine whether or not there's a possible violation. We then notify the city council within 15 business days. Council calls a meeting and briefed in executive session, and then you can have a hearing to hear from the complainant. We'd have all the normal due process rights. That can be done in executive session, or if the affected officer wants to have it in an open session, they can have it in an open session. Limitations. Most codes of conduct have some type of limitations, just like a time period, statute of limitations for bringing a lawsuit. And you need to have some reasonable time period by which people need to come forward so they don't keep beating the old dead horse. And then for interpretations, if a member of board or commission or council wants an interpretation, they can contact the city attorney, get an oral opinion or a written opinion. And what I will do in this instance, when we adopt this, I'll provide a written opinion.
In the interest of a little levity on page 2, the overview, it's nice to know that we're going to look at our statutes.
Pete, I want to go back here to the complaints against officers. And, when Bob was asking the question earlier, I was reminded that in most places it's illegal to yell fire in a crowded theater. And I'm wondering, what about the complaint that's actually filed with the city secretary in the afternoon and shows up on the 6 o'clock news that evening that a complaint has been filed, which is not unusual. Those things have happened. I've seen them related to other cities myself on TV. And so, is there any? I'm looking for the mechanism of how
I know where you're going, Mr. Murphy. Some cities will have provisions in there that the complaint is confidential and they're not supposed to be disclosed to third parties and that. And the reason for that is to maintain the reputation of the affected person, because it may in fact be not true, or it may not rise to a violation.
Right.
But and that's a call that you might want to make. If you want to have prohibitions in there about disclosure of the complaint until it goes to the council, that's fine too. But I'm sure we'll get open records requests for it anyway. So. On the other hand, what you're looking for, is there any penalty for someone who makes a false complaint? Some of the cities have a provision in there that makes it a misdemeanor offense to make a false statement in the form. So if you want to do that, we could add a provision that makes it a misdemeanor offense, a violation of the Code of Ordinances, if they file a complaint and that contains false. So if John Citizen makes up a story and submits it, if you want to make that a criminal offense, we can do that.
All right. And also, I kind of would like, and this is just my own personal feeling, unless you all share that we ought to have something in here that the clause of not being able to cry fire in a crowded theater. The venue of playing out the complaint process should not be, if we so choose, evening news. And so if there's a way to put that in there.
You're talking about maintaining the confidentiality of it?
Yeah, I'm saying yes.
As well as the...
Maintaining the process by doing that, basically. It's not being tried in public before it gets a chance to go through the process.
I guess, John, I'm not really quite sure what you're wanting to be changed. Could you elaborate?
What he's suggesting is that the complaint, once the complaint is filed, it's confidential, and that once it's at the city, the complainant and staff persons who receive in the council aren't supposed to disclose it to third parties.
Would it still be subject to the open records request?
It would be subject to open records, and of course, if you're going to the trouble of saying you want to maintain the confidentiality, then we'll have to ask the Attorney General for a decision whether or not it's confidential. And I can't recall whether the Attorney General's ever ruled on a situation like that. They may have. I have to go back and check.
handle information on this? If we're, we don't want to have a chilling factor on the filing of complaints, that's very, very true. But also, how do we get out information on the results of complaints? Do we just let that filter out, or do we?
Press release.
I'm not suggesting that.